Welcome back, everybody. It is Tuesday, September 4th, 2018, 2:42 p.m. And as we expected, Gordon has now caused state of emergency in 3 states. We have Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, all calling for state of emergency due to the approaching storm of Tropical Storm Gordon. Very possible that this may become hurricane force by the time it gets to landfall, and we're talking late tonight, early Wednesday is when that may take place. Now, that would be a 74 mile per hour wind, as opposed to where it is right now at 65 miles per hour. Regardless, guys, this thing will cause major storm surge. There is a lot of rain associated with this. They do not declare state of emergency for no reason. I also believe that because of the northern movement that this thing is just about making now, I'm going to show you this on a few charts. I believe Florida may join that group of state of emergency because of the panhandle. Now, let's look at a couple tracks here. We can see that the spaghetti plots have all combined together. They're pretty sure about where this thing is going to go. Looking at the charts, though, it does look like it's tracking a little bit more north than what these are showing, at least to my sight. Now, this could be wrong. I'm not exactly sure, but basically right now, because of the size of this thing, and the exact area it's covering basically 4 states because of this tight grouping in the Gulf that we have from Louisiana all the way to the panhandle of Florida. So that's why you see the tropical storm warnings on the coast here of Louisiana and the panhandle, and then the red are the hurricane warnings and watches, because that's where they think the eye of this storm will head. And the H there is representing a hurricane. That's when we cross that 74 mile an hour threshold. You can see right here, S's are for tropical storms, anywhere from 39 miles per hour to 73. And then category 1 is 74 miles an hour to 110 miles an hour. So that's what we're dealing with now. The weather.com website, which I use pretty often, you get basically good information here as far as the state of emergencies and evacuation. Sorry, guys. So the governors of Louisiana and Mississippi have declared state of emergency. That is official. And the New Orleans mayor urges some residents to evacuate. I'm not sure if that is a mandatory evacuation or not. Yes, this is not a Category 2, 3, 4, or even a 5 storm. So a lot of people are still used to last year when we were dealing with multiple Category 5s and 4s. Tropical storms are nothing to mess with, guys. They are very strong. We saw what this thing did in South Florida. Lots of flooding, massive flooding in that note. We had some waves that were just unbelievable near the Keys and the south areas of Florida. And since leaving that area, like we talked about yesterday, as this thing is in water, it will continue to strengthen until it has something to stop it. And the next thing to stop it, like we see right here, are the states in the Gulf. So this thing has a very good chance of becoming a Category 1 storm early Wednesday morning. That could be late Tuesday night, as in late tonight. So they're just within that 6 to 7 hour period right here is when they think that might possibly happen. In my opinion, I believe it's very possible. Now, we can see here, as we backtrack this, we can kind of get a visualization of where the central area of this storm is. We can see it's about right there. So these outer areas are considered the bands of this storm, which are already approaching or even covering parts of Pensacola. The entire panhandle of Florida is going to get rain from this, just as the south parts of Florida and the Keys did. And then they're projecting the eye of this storm to come right along this area, basically the border of Alabama and Mississippi here. And then that's why we saw the blue, the hurricane or tropical storm warnings for the areas of New Orleans in Louisiana. So we have to track this closely in order to figure out exactly where landfall is going to be. But when you have so many states grouped together, this chart gives you a little bit of an idea of where the storm is heading. You can see this line here. That is the direction of the eye. So we can see the central part of the storm is about right here. It's still projected to come up at an angle here. But when you look at it, it almost looks like it's going in a northern direction. The pressure above in the U.S. is allowing this thing to now hook north. So this may shift a little bit to the east. Regardless, though, this part of Louisiana, the Mississippi and Alabama areas, and the Panhandle will all absolutely feel the wrath of this storm, whether it's a Category 1 or a tropical storm. This chart here will show basically where they think the heaviest amount of rain will be from this. This is a rain-making storm. The winds are going to be significant, as 60, anywhere from 60 to 75, even 80-mile-an-hour gusts are going to be possible with this storm, so that is nothing to mess with. But again, because we had it traveling in the Gulf in open water, this thing is going to be a big rainmaker. There's a lot of areas in here, a lot of canals and little streams and rivers that you can kind of get a better look at on Google Earth. All these areas will be affected. All these little islands, Horn Island, Dolphin Island, all these areas here that are within that state of emergency area really need to be on alert, and that is why I believe the New Orleans governor has called for some evacuations in certain parts of this area. Now, again, I don't know if those are mandatory. I doubt that they are mandatory because it's not a storm that is Category 3 or higher. If that were the case, then you would absolutely be seeing mandatory evacuations. But again, that does not mean anyone should downplay this. It's a very serious situation. We could see on our county by county chart, tropical storm warning and hurricane warnings all in the same spots we just showed in the other charts. So that is what we have to go by as of right now. This was a 10 a.m. update here. So even this Tuesday evening, you could see the 75 mile per hour marker. This white line represents where they meet here, so that's 75 miles per hour. That would be a Category 1 storm. And then, guys, right underneath it, we now officially have Hurricane Florence, which is still up in the air about where exactly they think it's going to go. Really quickly, here's another chart representing what they think is going to be the worst of the storm surge. Now, a lot of this is in Mississippi. You could see here the entire south coast of Mississippi has that darker purple, the storm surge warning, and then the storm surge watch in Mobile, Alabama. Part of Alabama's coast is also involved in that big storm surge. We're probably 3 to 5 feet, give or take, especially if this thing reaches Category 1 strength. That's a decent amount of water, will certainly cause flooding. As far as Hurricane Florence goes now, we can see these spaghetti plots are still pretty wild, but the thing you want to focus on is the fact that they are moving more to the west. Instead of it coming up into the middle of the ocean like it was projecting earlier in this week and then getting pushed out by a high pressure system in the U.S., a lot of these models are now tracking this thing much closer to the coast of the U.S. So we're going to look at that in 1 second, but really quick, you could see on Tropical Tidbits here, this thing drops down to about 996 millibars in pressure just as it makes landfall. That could put it right into that Category 1 status. Again, once we reach that 74 mile per hour mark, that is when it becomes a Category 1 storm. But when you're dealing with a tropical storm of 65 miles an hour, it's really not going to make a difference. We're talking a lot of rain, a lot of flooding, and there's going to be wind associated with this. So tropical storm or Category 1, everybody should be taking the same precautions regardless of what the outcome is. Now, again, I do believe Florida will join that state of emergency only because of the fact that it's tracking a little more north, so that western angle may become more of a northern angle. And we can look at that once more as I show you here on this. Sorry about that. We backtrack here. As you can see, the central area of this storm is right around there. So follow that area. Sorry about that. As we move forward, you can see it's moving a little west, and now it hooks more north. So it is moving in a northern direction. And if that northern track does stay that way, we could be dealing with more of a landfall on the Florida-Alabama coast as opposed to the Alabama-Mississippi coast. Now, does that make much of a difference? Not really. The strongest of the winds, if it becomes a Category 1, will be obviously probably 50 miles out in a circle around the eye of the storm. But because, again, guys, because these states are so close together, everywhere in this area will be affected. There's not really many other places this storm can go. So we're kind of just determining where the central area, the eye of the storm, is going to pass and make landfall. And you could see that this northern direction may hold true, or it may continue to shift a little bit to the west in this direction like this. And that is where most of the charts are showing it, including those spaghetti plots. So I'm just going by visualization as I look at this chart, and you can kind of follow the eye of it I do have one more here. Yeah, we'll look at this one again, and you can kind of see this one loads a little slower. This tracks basically the direction it's heading, and then it pulls back as the storm gets up and closer. But you can see just at the end of the chart here, it wants to hook in a northern direction, which would bring it up here. Now, what happens between here and this area still has the potential for it to shift in a western direction. So that is why all these states are being declared in that state of emergency, I think, except Florida right now. That could have changed by the time this video uploads, but don't be surprised if Florida, because of the panhandle sticking far out to the west, would be included in that state of emergency. And again, guys, they don't declare state of emergency for no reason. They are taking this storm very seriously, as everyone in this area should as well. And really quickly, I just want to touch on Hurricane Florence one more time, which again is officially a Category 1 storm. This is, right now, as far as we are speaking, the GFS model is projecting a high-pressure system. Basically, it's forming over the Nova Scotia area all the way down to the northeast of the U.S. to create a high-pressure system that's going to aid in pushing this storm back out into the Atlantic before it even has a chance to get close enough to the coast to really affect us. But at the same time, the new version of the Canadian model, they have a whole other opinion about where this storm's going to go, and that is much closer, if not clipping the areas of North Carolina and Virginia around the 13th of September. Now, that is to show that anything 5 days out is very hard to project. So I'm not making predictions. Once again, I'm just showing you the data we have available. And right now, this is the Canadian version. And we'll look at the European model, which shows a pretty wild situation that we could be seeing. Now, you can see the Europeans have kind of agreed with the GFS model that Florence won't quite make it to the U.S. coast, but what comes after that is what is going to be concerning. And like we talked about, we could be dealing with a conveyor belt of storms in the next coming 2-3 weeks, possibly even longer. But that is one thing the Europeans and the GFS agree on, is we're going to see multiple storms, but Florence getting pushed out sooner than later, and then the Canadians have Florence coming all the way to the coast of the U.S. So that is just going to be another topic for another video that we are going to discuss once we make sure everybody is okay from Tropical Storm Gordon, possibly Category 1 Storm Gordon. All right, guys, that is the update for now. I will be back this afternoon, or later on this evening, rather, to update you on Gordon as it approaches the coasts of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and the panhandle of Florida. Please, everybody, stay safe and listen to those local weather stations. Anyone in these areas that are deciding to stay around, keep the TV on, keep the radio on, whatever you have to do.